Hi there, you're listening to the Scottish Paranormal podcast. Tonight's guest, we've got Mark Anderson on the show. It is the night before Halloween. We've got a full moon lying outside and it's dark. How's it going, Mark?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Chris. Good. Yeah, looking forward to tonight.
It was quite mad. I mean, I had the weekend came over. I was in here still working after work, and I was out mucking about, came back in, and I went back out and it's pitch black. It's like, oh, it's only 5 o'clock or something like that. It's like the clocks have went back and now everything's just it's pitch black, you know what I mean? So we're on the 30 days a night.
Yeah,
You've seen
and do you
that
know what?
film?
I love this time of year. Now, one of the best things is where Chris and we live quite close together, and one of the more famous places in Scotland is called Detmate Woods, and I take the dog out there. See, about 5 o'clock at night when it's starting to get dark, it's the best time in a clear night to see satellites and all the light pollution's away. So that's what I like to do. Maybe at this time of night, this sort of time of year, just go up. You just get to see the stars, taking the dog out for a walk. So I quite like it at this time of the year.
I like it, I know. I mean, I like it going back in the day when I was younger. I used to play hedgie at night. And to anybody who's listening to further afield that doesn't know what the Scottish vernacular of hedgie is, it's like going out and just like, jumping at people's hedges and doing the chicken run. They done it at night, nobody could see you.
we
This day and age, you probably get shot for
it. We used to call it in Dundee backy jumping.
So that's I used to do that so the good old days. But I like that as well. I like see when you get a nice clear nights, and it's starting to clear up a bit now. In fact, because the last couple of days the weather's been horrendous up here. It's been absolutely torrential rain, big massive puddles everywhere, ponds in the middle of the road, and stuff like that. So starting to see a bit clearer in the night. As I'm saying, full moon, although a wee bit of cloud still there, but hopefully it kind of kicks in when you get the nice crisp nights that come in when they're nice and frosty and all that kind of stuff. I have been kind of frequent in the mornings. I get out with the dog and either sometimes head up to Cairnpapel or head up to would you call it, B Craigs and stuff like that. So I like just nipping up to Cairnpapel. I'm taking a bit of Paul Sinclair's advice and trying to get out a bit more and get in the area. And up there, I did go in the area quite a lot, but maybe not up to Cairnpapel as much. I've done a short video recently and pinged it on YouTube, Truth Proof, in regards to just to show Paul some of the kind of things that's happened in about Cairnpapel. I said not just Cairnpapel, but I've got, as I said in the video, numerous things. You've alluded to the Deckman kind of forest incident. We had loads of other ones, and just run about that area. I'm not saying that's the area, but there is some kind of draw there over the years. I'm thinking of taking a wee trip up at the winter solstice to see who's there, because you get druids and all that going up and stuff.
Yeah.
So I might take a wee trip up and see what's up there, and try and maybe quiz them, see what they've seen.
Yeah, I've actually spoken to guys who are into shamanic stuff, and they have seen stuff there. I've actually spoken to a couple of guys, and what's unusual is that even though these guys don't know each other, is that some of the stories are quite similar in what they're seeing. And although Papel, it doesn't seem to be, there seems to be other places around there, like in the Bathgate Hills. There's also like Witch Craig, for example, which is quite unusual.
Yeah,
but I I would go so far in saying that Ken Papel is probably the epicenter, or seems to be, for me anyway. It just seems to be there's more stories there or close about there. There's a small car park about oh 2 or 3 minutes walk called the Knock, and there's a lot of people are reporting things there quite often. So yeah, I think that's actually one of the places that probably not is it's not been given the credit it's, that it gets. Dickmont, Bonnie Bridge gets a bit more limelight, but it's actually very active.
That was a thing, like back in the day, and I kind of stated that there was a lot of stories and sightings and cases about Bonnie Bridge and the surrounding areas, but that when they say the surrounding areas, it did stretch right out to West Lothian and into the Lothians, and that's when you had a lot of like quite prominent encounters where you had the Dickmont story with it was potential abduction or whatever the craft that tried to take Bob Taylor away, the forestry worker back in '79. Am I right in saying?
Yeah,
And then you had, so that was a kind of prominent case that everybody kind of knows about. You got the A70 encounter, which happened in '92. Prominent abduction case, which is literally for the Bob Taylor incident. You're only maybe talking about it's about 8 miles as the crow flies or something like that. If that,
yeah,
so far,
I'd even say 5 or 6
it's not
actually,
even
Chris.
that far. And for Kieran Papple's not that far as well. But then you've got that. You've got the Andy Swan encounter, which we spoke about, which was the black triangular craft, which is like the kind of black Toblerone shape prism type shape craft, which I've got a kind of wee story about recently that somebody pinged me a video, and I'll relay that now just as we go on. But that's some of the main kind of prominent ones in the area. You've also got sightings. There's a sighting in Armadale that dated back to the mid-80s, where there was 2 police officers seen a craft which they described like a flying clothes pole. You know what I mean? I take it that was a long cylindrical object.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I've got a story about that as well, which was the 2 brothers had seen the exact same thing, and I only got the actual story of them recently. I knew they'd seen it, but I hadn't had the story. So I'd seen him recently and spoke to him, so I'll relay that shortly as well. So that was another one. And then kind of moving out into that area, there's a lot of different stuff. I mean, there's so much things here, but interesting thing, I was up making a wee video recently, which I'm going to share on Truth Proof as well, about the Andy Swan encounter. I was doing a wee video in Armadale Academy. It took memories back because I used to be from Armadale, and there's a place where I used to play when I was younger called the Moss, which was just kind of mossland and bogland and stuff. And it was that place where I used to have that strange feeling. And what brings it? I think I mentioned this in one of their podcasts. Forgive me if I have, right? But it's when I relayed the story about the Silverman story, and I had a kind of weird feeling where I was running up in that same area where the Silverman thing took place. Unbeknown to me, that kind of story, I only knew about the story about 20 years later, when I had this kind of feeling of fear. And when I've relayed in the story that I had this feeling of fear, and it was like being a child again and having an unknown fear of something. What my mind always took me back to was the place in Armadale where I used to go and have this Tarzan swing up the Moss, and it was far from the North Rig Road, which was where the Andy Swan encounter kind of took place. Andy's also seen a few other things in that same vicinity over the years. Sent me a video. Something we'd seen. It was like a kind of a white sphere with lights going on about it. It's hard to discern what it is. It's definitely not a plane. He knows what a plane is. Obviously, he's in a satellite and stuff like that. It definitely was in a satellite. It was like a massive kind of white light with like lights going on about it. There was also a guy with him who worked on Rolls Royce aircraft. He didn't know what it was either. You know what I mean? There's this thing, they taped out the video, sure, but when you see these videos in phones, they're no ideal. You know what I mean? You can just, that's just the light. And, but I understood the fact that he's staying a flight path. He knows what kind of, like kind of planes lights are and all that kind of stuff. So he sent me stuff like that. And then other ones came up as well within Armadale. When I done that story with Andy, it was a family friend got in contact and they had seen something in the same vicinity, which was just next to or no far from the North Rig Road and up next to where he stays now, which was a kind of I think it was a orange or kind of gold colour orb, which was flying erratically at night, in a kind of angular kind of fashion and stuff like that. And like the words that she was, it was quite unnerving. That's what she said. With it. Same place, right? Same place. And this was only round about COVID time or just pre-COVID, right? When they had, because he said it probably around about COVID or just before COVID, where he had seen that one, he showed me the video, and then it was slightly after that when the old family friend got in contact with me. Unbeknown to her, she didn't know where the actual thing took place. A lot of people don't know where Andy Swan encounter took place. They just roughly knew it was up the North Rig Road, right? But he took me to the exact spot, right? So I was at the spot and up there seeing it, so I know exactly where it is now. Somebody sent me a video recently. This is a connection to it as well. So they sent me a video recently from Blackridge, the town Blackridge, which is basically the next town on from Armadale. So the Andy Swan encounter kind of happened in between the two in the back roads, probably more near Blackridge and Armadale. So this was in the main street of Blackridge, and the video is only maybe a number of seconds long. It's no very long. They say they cut it off because they were having a personal conversation, but just to kind of show what it is. And it actually, when I asked when it happened, this is only recently, and only maybe talking in the last month or maybe 6 weeks or something like that, I got this video. And they had, I'd say probably 6 weeks. It's probably between a month to 2 months anyway, right? I've had the video. And I went back and asked when it was, and I'll get to what was in it. They said it was probably December time. I hadn't noticed that at the time, but they said it was December last year. And I'm going to have a discussion with her about it. So the video shows basically just a bright big light in the sky, right? Very, very low to the ground, just above the tree line. You're looking at it from the main road. The good thing about the video as well, which is it's a video from a phone, right? Which are no ideal, but you can actually see a plane in the background. So you can see the size of a plane, the plane's lights, far in the background, and so you can see this thing. It's a massive light hovering above the trees. And you said it moved, it started stationary for a while, then it moved to the right, and then it disappeared. But there's only so much of the video you can see with this like bright light. So I looked at the video. I then went to a Google map and I went to street maps and found exact, because the sign's still there, because the sign, there's a housing estate getting built there, right? And the sign is exactly still there. So I went to the place, got the sign, looked at it. I then correlated it right through, or triangulated it through. It's in the exact same place where the Andy Swan encounter was.
Do you know, I had so just for people that probably don't know me very well, Chris and I live in an area called West Lothian, and essentially you can almost imagine that there's between Edinburgh and Glasgow, there's town after town after town, and they just seem to go on. And in West Lothian, it seems to be quite active. So that's where things like A70 incident, Deckman Woods, Cairnpapel are all kept. And the one thing is as well is that the aircraft use it as a flight route. So if you're at Cairnpapel, you'll see planes descending, and then when they get to my town of Livingston, they're actually really low down because it's only about 7-8 miles to the airport. And I've dealt with people who have made mistakes and are misidentifying. And even the people that make, like, I've had one person that actually was thinking that the planets, like things like Venus, for example, and Jupiter, were actually UFOs, but even they wouldn't miss planes. It's just really hard to do where we are. Yeah. I actually also had a lady who contacted me about, and I'm just wondering if it's the same person, because it was a couple of months ago, and the person actually saw a light, and it was actually next to a sign. I can't remember where the case was. It was, but I think it was around about that area, around Blackridge area, actually. So I'll need to catch up with you after this call and make sure we might be speaking with this person actually.
But it's interesting though, because it's quite a prominent light, and it's definitely too low down to be like a plain light or anything like that. Because when you see it in the daytime, you can see where the trees are, and you can see the line of sight where the planes would be, and you can see the flight path in the background, and you can see the size of the planes in the background and stuff like that. But this thing is there, and it's sitting stationary for a wee while, and then she said it moved along. There was a lot. She goes a longer video, but I was having a private conversation. I didn't want to relay that.
Mhm.
And just on her phone, right, which is fair enough. But unbeknown to her, a lot of people don't know where the Andy Swan encounter took place, right? So the line of sight where this thing goes right through, it's just coincidence or no, right? I'm not saying it's the same thing and the same. It's going to be something to do with that, but coincidentally enough, it's the exact same. It cuts right through the exact same location, and this thing couldn't have been high in the sky. I mean, for the line of sight, you can see it because you've got like above the tree line. If you keep going, you've then got like Fault House and all that kind of stuff, kind of further up past Whitburn. You know what I mean? So if it was a plane, it would need to be like flying low to the ground all the way along for it to keep getting the prominent light. But even the brightness of the light was like really, really bright for that. It would need to be sitting basically just above the back of Blackridge, you know what I mean, for to have that, and you would have seen the plane. Anyway, regardless of what it is, it might have been something anomalous. It might have been a rational explanation for it. The video's long enough to ascertain that. But the interesting thing that I kind of took for it all is when I actually looked at it and took the lineage for that for the place where they were standing through the actual sign, like where the sign was, and then obviously the light was. It takes you right through the Andy Swan encounter, right through it, because it's just on the back road beyond that a few miles. So that was one thing. So the other interesting story that I'll get these out when I remember them, right, and we can get a chat. So it's like I'm just going rattling through them now. There was another one as well where I was making a video for a short video, as I said there, for the Andy Swan encounter, and the farmer stopped and asked me basically what I was doing. You know what I mean? So I just told him kind of what I was doing, and he basically took my number. You know what I mean, for somebody else, because he was somebody else I know's got like a few accounts. So he actually asked for my number. I mean, I just asked him, I told him what I was doing and stuff like that, and he said, "All right," and he knew who Andy Swan was, he knew the story,
Yeah.
and he said that is a quite a strange area, and he goes, "Can I get your number?" so so I quite interesting, and I'm going to catch up with the person quite soon
Yeah.
to find out kind of what it was. But that was kind of a few things just in that. It's quite new. Other things quite new as well, which is, well, it's an old story, but I've relayed that a couple of times that I knew there was a few brothers that seen, and I talked about the police officers who seen the flying close pole type UFO, which is a long cylindrical UFO. Like they say that it was that. It's not a flying close pole, but the interesting thing was I knew there was a few brothers who'd seen it. There were a few other witnesses. I'd never spoke to them, and they never came forward. And I knew them, I still know them, and I hadn't really kind of spoke about it. And somebody told me, "Oh, they seen that." So I asked them about it. I happened to be in a house with them. I was at a friend's having a drink, and I seen them, and I asked them about the story. So what they had seen is they were playing football in a place called the Corrie Park, which is in the bottom of Armadale, on the way out of Armadale, like basically the south of Armadale or
All right,
south.
that makes the swimming pool, is it?
Yep, aye.
Yeah, there
So
we
just
are.
down past the swimming pool on the right hand side. So they were in there playing football in Corrie Park, and then there was like this massive ship in the sky, like above. They said it was towards probably between Armadale and Bathgate,
Yeah.
in the sky, and it was oblong. It said it was oblong, kind of silvery whitish, and then it would, and they said it had lights right along it. It had like dots, kind of lights right along it, and that's just the oblong thing he said. But what would happen was every now and again it would just beam really, really, really bright. Like the whole thing would just beam really, really bright, and then die back down again, and you could see where it was. And it would do that intermittently, like not like it would just kind of go right, 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 massively bright, and then kind of come down again, just stationary. This thing, and I'm sure there was the two brothers had seen it, and maybe somebody else. I think at the time there must have only been, I don't know, there must have only been maybe, what age would they have been then? Since they would probably have been around about 8 maybe something like that, or 9.
Mhm.
And then they went. One of them went to get his dad to get him to see it. But at the time the dad got there, it was away. But the police seen the same thing. I think they seen it from a different angle, but just said it looked like a flying clothes pole, like a cylindrical type object. And that was, I'm sure it was around about 85 or 86. It's actually in the Profo's website, which is which was I think Gary Hesseltine had has got a website about police accounts
Yeah,
right across the UK. I'm sure it's called Profos, and that account's in there. Because after
yeah.
I had them on here, the discussion, I kind of thought I'm going to go through and see if that one is in there, and I had a good look through it, and I found it. It is in
Now,
there.
I think it was also in the Scottish Paranormal. No, no, there's like a paranormal database, UK wide. Uh, if memory serves me correct, there was not two police officers noticed something around about Whitburn areas, or is that different? About the 70s. So actually, no, that was in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another encounter with police officers in Whitburn, which isn't too far away from
No,
Armadale.
no, it's no. Whitburn's mainly the next town further south,
Mhm.
um, and that I mean, and that's Whitburn's near the North Rig Road encounter.
Mhm.
In regards, it's like if you can imagine, it's between Armadale and Blackridge, but Whitburn's the next town further to the south of the town. When I was talking about Quarry Park, that was mainly north of the town. It wasn't the south of the town. It was like down the bottom bit is the north. So with that being said, the interesting thing I found about Whitburn, and there's been a few kind of stories about that area, about Bolkemet, strange stories and things like that. And there's I'm not sure if I can subscribe to it or no, but I find it interesting that people subscribe to um the geomagnetic anomalies, to like
Yeah,
some things in window areas and things like that.
yeah,
And there's a massive geomagnetic anomaly which sits further south of Whitburn, and it stretches right out for Whitburn, Shorts, a big anomaly right there, and it stretches for miles. So you can see it on you can get the maps like the NASA and stuff like that and look at it and everything. And I've looked at everything in that area. Nothing at Bonnybridge, although Bonnybridge is, I'm sure it sits quite low on the anomaly, but there's a high area that sits right round about that area. Basically, if you can like, if you look at like where kind of further kind of Whitburn fault to shots, then further kind of south of that, and kind of stretching into the bit of Pentlands there and things like that.
yeah,
So all that bit, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting theory. The reason I kind of link it as well was where you get um there's like strange anomalies happening in places like that. You get like there's places like I think people say like Skinwalker Ranch like that. Some places like Skinwalker Ranch. There's also a thing called the Kentucky Anomaly, which is like a right high geomagnetic kind of field there, and there's loads of strange encounters there, which is like UFOs, cryptids, just crazy stuff. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So don't know. I mean, that's it's just a kind of. I think it's an interesting thing. I mean, but might have absolutely nothing to do with anything.
There's a guy called David Cowan who I really like. I've actually had the privilege of meeting the guy. He's done some exceptional work. He's a dowser, and with dowser he's got the two metal rods, and he can sense energy. And he's gone through an area of Scotland called Perthshire, but he's been doing it for 40 years, and he's been tracking all the energy lines. And there's what I really like about him is the thoroughness of what he talks about, but also there's people that I really respect him. So a chap who used to be a president of the Scottish Society of Psychical Research. That's a tongue twister. A guy called Nick Kyle. He really respects him, and even people like Ron Halliday. And Ron Halliday's an experienced dowser, and he really has a lot of respect for people like for David Cowan. And then what Mr. Cowan was saying was that things like volcanic plugs are maybe the epicenter of these sort of like not geomagnetic anomalies, but like energy lines or ley
Yeah.
lines.
Mhm.
And the thing about like Deckman Woods, there's actually a hill called Deckman Law, but there's a smaller hill called Deer Hill, and that's actually where the abduction actually happened. And Deer Hill itself was a volcanic plug, and
Mhm.
that's so it does subscribe quite nicely. The other things that are really interesting as well is that in a lot of these energy lines, you'll see like things like stone henges or stone circles,
Yeah.
and Cairn Pathol, which we've spoken about before, has a henge, and quite unusually, like places like Stonehenge will be down the ground. Kinpapel is actually on a hill, which is really quite unusual for that sort of henge-like structure.
Yeah.
And what I found really interesting, the only thing I've ever heard about something is, I think, and please forgive me if I'm going wrong, but I think Skinwalker Ranch, they've got a hill, and at the end of it, they've got a.
They've got like a stone. It's not a stone circle, but it's a stone. It goes in a what they relayed. If you look at it from above, it goes in a type of spiral.
Yeah.
In a type of spiral. And there was a kind of spirally stones spread out quite widely on the top of the hill, which the spiral was supposed to purportedly be like a portal or something like that. And it's also in some of the neighbouring areas where they've got it on walls and stuff like that, like a spiral design and things like that. And some in ancient kind of beliefs as the spiral was maybe like to do with a portal. And that's kind of what the whole kind of thing with the Skinwalker Ranch. Interestingly enough, there's petroglyphs in the hill above Bonnybridge, which has got a double spiral in it as well. When you find that, there's like a big stone in the woods up there at the top of Bonnybridge, and it's got like a double spiral and cut marks in it.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
So it's interesting kind of linking all these kind of things together, you know what I mean? And trying to make head and tail of it, you know what I mean? And I don't think I ever will, you know what I mean? If people like, I don't know, like some of the good researchers of the day, you know what I mean? John Keel and things like that, if they couldn't make head and tail of it, I don't think I will, you know what I mean? But at least they can try and chip away and put bits back into the puzzle or find something to do with it, you know what I mean? Or
Yeah, there's I find that those things really interesting. The cut marks, and the one, if you don't mind me just going into this briefly, the there's a lot of things called cup and ring marks, and they're just essentially little. They'll just be little like grooves in a rock. But again, going back to David Cowan, he was saying that these are probably reference to some sort of energy circuit.
I'm going to try and find a picture of it now. I took it. Just keep talking, and I'll dig
yeah,
it.
No bother. The other thing that I think is really interesting is in I can't remember what area of Scotland it is. I've actually been to it just a couple of years ago. Kilmartin Glen. That has a couple of areas that actually have those sort of like those spiral heteroglyphs, like what you're talking about.
Aye.
And the on when the signs are saying this probably represents sperm and eggs. And I'm thinking these guys are probably about, I don't know, thousands of years old. They're going to have knowledge of that sort of level of the human body. But the other thing they're saying is that these are found all over Europe, like in Portugal, for example. So it seems to be replicated not just in Scotland, but also all over Europe and in America as well.
What's the big stone that was found out in Glasgow called again? There's a big massive stone found out in Glasgow, which has got loads of cut marks and on it. Oh, what's it called again? It's massive. It's like it's got loads on it.
I don't know.
It got covered over. They actually covered over it because they were scared in case it was going to get vandalised or damaged, and then they dug it back up again. It's like the conch stone or something. What's the name of it? Can't remember the name of it. But it's quite interesting, like the actual kind of size of this thing with like loads of stuff on it. Just try to dig out a picture where I can see it. Where the hell's that picture meant to?
The one that I found interesting, and if anybody's from this area, I'd love to speak more to them, is in Fife in Markinch.
Aye.
So it's a really, really interesting area. And what you're talking about, like there's an area of Markinch, there's a path that takes you up to another town. And I've had to run away from there. Just the fear overwhelmed me. And what's really interesting is they've got a henge like Kinpapel, but on the lower ground, and it's actually on the Rose Line. So it actually goes like for example, for like the Notre Dame Cathedral, then up to Roslin, just like what you see in the Da Vinci Code. But then it goes through, it keeps on going further, and it goes through this 5,000-year-old henge called Balfarg. And then there's a smaller ring, a stone circle, and that's got cup and ring marks. And they've actually moved it to make way for a road. But it just seemed that there's other little things that almost like demonstrate an energy circuit, like a mound with now an old an old churches, but there's been older an older structure underneath that. Then there's another standing stone. It almost makes like an energy circuit.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of things happen. I lived in Markinch, and there was a lot of weird things happening there. There's also quite a well-known story about the Beast of Barburnie, which was a big cat being seen in the mid-2000s. So
That was with the picture that the picture of the teeth was taken. If you ever heard us talking about the picture.
Oh yeah.
That's where that was taken, Barburnie House.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Aye, very, very mad place. You know what I mean? I can't find the picture. I'll need to dig them out. I mean, that's annoying me now. What I'll do, I can stick them into I can add them in.
Yeah.
I've got pictures of the cut marks in that anyway. The ones above Bonnybridge, which is there's quite good. There's actually ones that looks like a kind of an alien's face. There's like 3 in a row. There's like 2 big ones as if it's eyes, and there's like a mouth. We'll see it as that. All right, but you've got that, and then you've got the kind of spirals on the other side, quite prominent. You know what I mean? Quite big. You know what I mean? So, Markinch is an interesting place. You know what I mean? I do find that with the picture, and the kind of funny thing was that you were telling me about Markinch, and then it wasn't long after that my friend sent me the picture.
Yeah, really.
and he didn't know you at all. He's
Yeah.
go into the paranormal or anything like that. It's just like he had a few friends who were at a wedding. He goes, "I'll have a look at this," and it's no. I mean, it's no as if like people, if it was outwardly shared, they would just turn and say, "Oh, it's just this, it's just that." But when you actually see it and look in it, I've shared it like a couple of times, just a wee bit at the bottom, so people kind of see who's in it and stuff. But it's definitely a real picture, and you actually see the jawline and all that kind of stuff in the shadow. I mean, talked about it before, but interesting. That's what I'm saying. Interesting synchronicity when you were talking about Mark Einstein before. You were telling me about the story of the kind how it lines up and whatever, and then it was only a few weeks after that or whatever that I'd got the picture, and it was actually a few weeks after that I got invited to a wedding at Barburnie House, which is
No way.
just totally bonkers. Aye, I was like never been there before, never knew where it was.
Yeah.
And it was an overnight wedding there, and we went. Nothing happened. Just got drunk. I mean, that was it. Went to bed, woke up, had a walk about the next morning. That to try and get the hangover away, but never seen anything. I was too hungover.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful. Barburnie Park's beautiful. It used to be owned by a family called the Balfours, and the Balfour family still live there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful part of the world. The one thing that isn't well known as well is that there's a small town called Star of Markinch, and there's a place called Star Moss. Now, I've never heard any stories about people saying it's creepy, or no, I've never heard any people saying an experience of the UFO or anything like that. But a lot of the residents that live in Star and in Glenrothes and all that, if they know it, they'll say that place is creepy as hell. I've never had any, but it's just the fact that so many people find it quite scary. And I remember running through it one morning, and just the mist. And I was like, "Oh God, it's like something from a Hammer horror movie." It was quite scary, but it is really beautiful. And the one thing I find, even if there's not any paranormal connections, there's places like in Burnt Island, for example, in Fife, and then Markinch. These sort of ancient sites and structures are all over Scotland. And I think there's something really valuable with them, just even from a historic point of view. And I love seeing these things. There's just so many of them about.
There's one that I kind of relayed to you. I've not really relayed it outwardly, online or anything like that. But it may be nothing, it may be something. But when I was walking up B Craigs, I think I told you this. The funny thing was, I was listening to something, and it was about I was actually listening to a podcast, and it was like something to do with orbs or something like that. And I turned. It was on the see the road that runs at the right at the back of B Craigs. It runs if you drive up the back of it, and you've got the wee mast that's there, the small kind of mast, and you've got do you know where I am? It's like it's no like it's just like on the pathway. It's like a small weather mast or something like that.
Yes, is it the same? It's a footpath that will take you up to the Cockerell Hill. Is that the same?
No there. So if you drive a is it Bulverne or whatever, the Bulvorme, the normal kind of car park, just with the swings and all that kind of stuff. If you drive right up that steep road and you get to the top of it, there's a wee kind of lay-by you can park, right? So if you walk down that, it'll take you all the way back down to like where the loch is. All right.
Yeah, I know you are. Yeah.
I was coming through the woods and I was coming out the back way. and I had the dogways and stuff like that, and I was listening to a podcast. And I was trying to think of the time. I'm sure it was March. It was that March this year, and or April, round about that time, because I'll need to double check with the times and stuff. I didn't record the date. I could dig it out, but it was for looking at this stuff. I should have recorded that. You know what I mean? But I was just busy and all that kind of stuff. But I could work out because I did record it somewhere, so I've got a rough idea. But when the sun was setting, roughly about 6:30, 7ish, as I could remember. So it might have been about Marchish or something like that. So anyway, walking through the woods, coming up, I was listening to a podcast of Davy Orbs and stuff like that, funnily enough. And I turned the corner and I had a dog with us. And there was like, there's these wee paths that come up the woods and you've got the long track I'm talking about. So I started walking back up that track towards the laybys. And then a good walk there. And I just turned the corner. I was maybe about, I don't know, 20 metres in, if not a wee bit more than that. I seen a bright light in the forest, almost like, and you're talking the trees that I seen the light shining through, right? It was just like they were only maybe 5 meters away from me, right? But initially, to me, it looked like the sun shining through the trees, right? And I actually thought it was the sun, right? And I kind of didn't even take any notice. It was almost like the sun shining through the trees. So, see if you're walking past trees and the sun shining through, it was like that, but it was only like in a clumpy trees that kind of shone through, right?
That's mental.
And I kept walking, and I turned around and I thought, and I looked over. The sun was setting over on the opposite side because at that time of year, it's like the sun will set further south, right? So, and it was like I kind of stopped and I kind of thought the sun's over there, right? So I stopped and I walked back, right, and I seen an orange light, right, go through the forest, right? Only maybe this must have only been the orange light I seen. See the actual the shiny light I seen. It was coming through the trees, right? It was really, really bright. It looked like the sun, right? Just for that glint that I seen, just for that splits kind of couple of seconds.
Yeah.
And I just kept walking though. I didn't take any notice until I thought I just had that a few steps and I thought, no, the sun's there.
That's weird.
And I walked back, right? And then it looked like, see what in my head, like see if you had a lantern, right? And I know I'm saying this like Jackie Lantern, right? But if you had a lantern and it was like only about probably 10 meters in the tree line. This light now was just basically a kind of orangey colour moving through the trees. It wasn't dark. This wasn't dark, right? This was still light because the sun had the setting on that. It was just kind of like setting, so it was still quite light. And I actually thought, and I kind of thought, no, I'm going to go and check out what this is, right? Because a few steps, I could hear people coming down the path. I kind of thought, maybe there's just somebody in there.
Yeah.
So I walked around, I went back to the dog, nobody there, right? I thought there's nobody there. And I thought there must be a rational explanation for this, right? So I went in, there's a path further in there, right? There's a path further in, and there's a mountain bike path further in. So I thought maybe somebody with a mountain bike light on it, right? I'm trying to rationalise that I'm looking at it, right? So I've went up and I've looked at it. The mountain bike track is well in, right? It's a good bit in. I mean, and then for me to actually see the orange kind of light, how would I be seeing that at that bit? So I went and looked at the track, right? So what is I seen this bright light and I seen an orange light. It was like, so if you can imagine, I'm staring at this, it's a flash of bright light. I walk a few steps, I thought, no, I turn back and then I see an orange glow, like just going through the forest, not too far away though, and it's no like way in the forest. This is just like about 10 meters in. And I kind of thought, but it was quite dense in that. I kind of thought, there's somebody there just walking through, a dog or something. So I went round, nobody there, couldn't see nothing. And I'm kind of rationalised it thinking, right, maybe it's somebody on a mountain bike who's had a bright light, they've came through, just shone for that one split second, and then I'm just maybe seeing the back of the light kind of gone out. So I've since went right in, and I've looked at the mountain bike track. It's quite deep. And I'm thinking, so what I want to do is I want to get maybe if you go in the forest or one of us will stand with the bit, I want to see if you can see a light through there or laser light it through or something like that, because I don't think you can. And it looked for where I could see it. I was actually up there the other day there, and I kind of thought that kind of happened there. Because where I seen the orange light, the actual the actual mountain bike track is well done. And you wouldn't get a mountain bike or anything like that through any other bit. You wouldn't. You couldn't.
Yeah,
It's like heavy trees and marsh and all that kind of stuff. But the actual track is probably it's probably a good 100 meters down or something like that, if not more than that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
You wouldn't have seen it.
I know that. I know. I don't know exactly know where you are, but I know the landscape. And the other thing as well, it's probably important to say is it's quite well signposted to say, like, if you're a mountain bike place, not to go in there. They've got like red signs saying only for mountain bikes. So
You probably could go in there but with that though. But what I'm getting at is like it's the I'm not making something it's no because I rationalise it thinking it probably is something like that, right? But I went in and looked at it. But the track is well further back.
mhm.
I never seen anybody coming out when I went back and looked, unless they maybe shot into another bit of forest, or whatever. But I couldn't see anybody. It was quite far away. I just kind of think you wouldn't get that intensity of light for them being that far into dense forest and that kind of shining through. I mean, I've got bike lights and that, and they're nothing like that. But I mean, and then seeing an orange light kind of floating through as well, it was like it was a funny one. And there was people coming down my dog and that after that, and I kind of thought like maybe there's been somebody there. But I went right round. I made a point. I was like, no, I'm going to go and check what this is to see.
Yeah,
Usually I just kind of walked on, but I was like, no, I'm going to go back. And I went round. I turned the corner, I went down, I looked in it, and I kind of was a bit perplexed. I thought there's nobody there. You wouldn't get a bike through there. You wouldn't get this through there. And I was like, what was that? I'll take you up and let you show you exactly where
yeah,
it happened. Nah, it was just a
yeah.
bad one, but it might be absolutely nothing. Um,
Well, talking about orange lights, I think I messaged the other day. Somebody that we both know, I know very well, has reported that they saw an orange UFO. Now, this person is not really into UFOs, and very believable witness. Somebody I've known for a long time. So,
aye.
yeah, it is really it's a really interesting place. One thing I did about actually almost 2 years ago was I went around Bathgate with a guy who knew the area really well, and so the Bathgate Hills. So the Bathgate Hills, they sort of start at the north part of Livingston and uh, end up ending up about Linlithgow area. Is that roughly? And then to
Yeah,
the
Bathgate Hills is skirt right round like Bathgate, Linlithgow. Well, probably like Terfickin, Linlithgow. Maybe no, aye. You probably there. That's where they kind of come in and right round into. Yeah, aye.
mhm.
So a good
and
kind of radius in there.
yeah, and it's a beautiful part of the world, but it's it's there's so much activity. Like the person I spoke to was saying there's a lock there, for example. It's a man-made lock, and they said that they used to go round there as kids, and they saw like a ghost. There's other things about reports, and I've spoken to this person who it was like there's something banging on their car, and they're just up there one night. So there's so much activity there. We're probably
Yeah.
missing stuff, but we've even heard of campers being like approached, like footsteps coming towards campers in the Bathgate Hills. And the only time ever I've heard about something similar to that is Ben McDewey. So it's a really active place,
Yeah.
and it's super fascinating.
No, it is. That's it. When I was talking to Paul Sinclair, he was keen to try and get out more. You know what I mean? As in, like, because they go out quite a lot. They'll go out and they'll skywatch and they'll record stuff kind of like most nights and things like that during the week and weekends and day stuff like that. So I try and spend time up when I'm out walking the dog. So I'll be out walking the dog in the morning, which is I'm literally at probably the base of the Bathgate Hills where I stay now.
Mhm.
Which I reckon I'm probably what to Cairn Papel, I'm probably about 4 miles away as the crow flies.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? If that. But I mean, I'm out there with the dog in the mornings and stuff and try and get out when I can. And but you know what it's like with this the age we're in the now, kids and all that kind of stuff, and clubs and work and everything. It's try to get time to do it. You know what I mean? That's it. You just
Yeah.
need to try and make time to push into it. But listen, we'll get there. And the main kind of thing about me wanting to do this podcast was to get more people to come forward. You know what I mean? The odd stories coming out. There is a few things coming out here and there. You know what I mean? And it's like, hopefully, um, if anything more happens in the disclosure process, if maybe more people will come out kind of for that. You know what I mean? But A quick kind of segue into that, but I mean, you've been following much with disclosure. What's been happening?
Not for a while actually. The one the one with Arrow put me off a bit, and just for anybody that's not again doesn't really know me that well, I was researching AI for a talk this year, and then one of the people who were interviewing, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, was talking about things like predictive analytics, which is essentially what AI is used for. And I'm thinking, oh no, this is this is rubbish. And it just felt as that UFO podcast people call it a nothing burger, and it just seems to be consistent nothing burgers over and over again. So I've got to admit I've kind of been put off by it because of the fact that they're just giving you this little crumb of something that's interesting, and then the rest of it it's very carefully worded denials, and that's
Aye.
yeah.
The recent report came out as well, and it was like total shit. You know what I mean? Excuse the language.
Yeah.
But it was, and so if people don't, the thing is though, if you don't follow it, you might not hear about it. You might not know about it. Most of the general public don't know about it. But if you're no aware of it, you know what I mean, there's been a push within the US Congress to get more oversight on. I'd say they're kind of looking to try and get more oversight on one, the recording of it in regards to pilots and military, which has happened, and they can actually record more of their sightings and all that kind of stuff now for air misses and air traffic misses and things like that for UAP, they call them, or UFOs. But in regards to that, so that's been happening for a long wee bit of time now. There's been pushed by different people within. Generally, what it is people within the DoD pushing it. They want to try and get this out disclosure wise, and there's people trying to keep it in. Congress are kind of stuck in the middle. They're trying to go through legalities here and trying to get hearings done and things like that. There's been the UAP task force are set up. Then there's now Arrow are set up, which are basically looking into it, but they're still looking at lights in the sky and shit like that, which is basically just annoys me because they've been looking at that going back to for like 80 years ago, 75, 80 years ago. And even then, they're saying the same things. And even then, they said it was more credible than they're actually saying it is now in some of these ones. But there's stuff coming out. And if you actually follow it or look into it, it takes a lot to kind of look at it because there's loads and loads there to follow. You need to know what to follow, what news cycles to follow, because it'll get on a bit of mainstream news for 5 minutes of airplay or whatever, or been the Guardian, or it'll been a few different other kind of tabloids, or it'll be on News Nation or CNN or whatever else, and it'll disappear again. But there has been a bit of push happening, so there's been a number of different reports came out. Nothing in them that great. There's been the last hearing, which we Commander David Fravor, Ryan Grush, and what's the other pilot's name?
Oh, I thought it was David Grush and Ryan Graves, is it?
David Grush and Ryan Graves. Sorry, that's it. Aye, and so they were Ryan Graves and Commander Fravor. David Fravor was they were two pilots who encountered different UFOs in the sky. Recorded them. These things were recorded on a lot of different sensor systems, so they were there. There were things. One of them actually chased them and things like that. And I mean, chased the actual Tic Tac. That was back in 2004. So anyway, Grush was he worked for the UAP task force. That was before the new one it's been set up called Arrow. And he interviewed a number of different contractors during that process, people who worked on programs. So this is all about oversight. It's all about basically about money, about oversight, about secret programs that I know it sounds conspiracy theorist like, but it's true. Programs that have got the oversight on and for like monetary terms. So it's there's Congress should have oversight on it, and that's the kind of main kind of game they're trying to play to try and get some of these people who have potentially got recovered craft and stuff like that. And it's not even just the DoD; it's going to be private industry, places like Lockheed Martin, MacArthur Douglas, different types of places like that, who have got the onerous on some of these things. So there's a bill that's been put forward called the Schumer Amendment, which is it'll be probably getting pushed through in December if it happens. I think they're making amendments to it. But if that goes ahead, the wording in that is basically if you've got it's mainly saying that if there's companies got craft or recovered injury, basically in the word in it actually says recovered craft of unknown origin, recovered materials of unknown origin, or non-human intelligence. It states like non-human intelligence in this bill about like 26 times or something. I might be wrong in that number, but it goes through this. This is going through Congress. It talks about recovered craft, recovered metamaterials, biologicals, things like that. So it talks about all this non-human intelligence. So they think that, or they know because they've had briefings with different people, that these programs exist. They know exactly where the craft are. They know what they've got. They know where they're keeping them. But they need this oversight to happen so they actually can take them back. So there's a thing called eminent domain, which means that they can retrieve them and take them back. But then there's a clause in there in case, well, they think they're making some changes to the word in it, because some of these private contractors might have actually retrieved these craft on their own merit or own teams or whatever else. So all this is happening. So the way it looks like now, there's like a bit of push. There's a bit of push with people like Lou Elizondo, you got Christopher Mellon. You know what I mean? So they were basically in the ATIP program. Christopher Mellon wasn't he? He was it under Defence and Intelligence or something like that? Christopher Mellon was.
I remember.
So
Yeah.
but remember it all, and actually it does take a bit. You know what I mean? So there's probably some of that wrong, but I mean, in regards to the actual context, it's right. So watch your space. You will get snippets in the news and all that kind of stuff, and there is things happening. You know what I mean? So one of the latest things to come out was one of the guys who were one of the project managers in OSAP, a guy called James Lukatsky. He was a physicist, and one of the new book that he's got out with Colin Kelleher and George Knapp, he had relayed a bit in that in regards to that they had a craft and they managed to get inside it and stuff like that. You only said a certain amount, couldn't go too far with it. But there's things happening. So
here's a question about OSAP now. If you've ever read Skinwalkers in the Pentagon, which is a fantastic book, they talked about the different things within OSAP, but they also very clearly said that there was database developers and people developing these sort of like business, so these sort of like intelligence solutions. Mm-hmm. Now, where did all that data go to?
That they've got the biggest amount of data on UFOs, apparently. You know what I mean? Because they had like teams of people working on it constantly. Yeah. So they've got that data. That's the thing. So they don't know if that data has been shared by anybody else, like the UAP task force and the now like the Arrow, which is set up. But in regards to it, the interesting thing is, if you actually look into it on and know, or the person who was asked to set up the UAP task force was a guy called Jay Stratton, who used to actually work or was like head of the OSAP kind of program when that was running as well. He is the guy in the book. If you read the book Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, he is the guy who is Axelrod. Where he had the what was it? Hitchhiker effect.
Yes,
so, some type of dogman type thing in his back garden. Seen orbs, kids and that, seen them. That I mean, I think other kids in the street had seen this daft wolf-like creature at the back of his house. His wife seen it, and it had claw marks on a tree and all that. Strange things.
They went to Skinwalker Ranch, didn't he? So Axelrod was in Skinwalker Ranch with two other people, and they were doing some sort of surveys.
So that was supposed to be Jay Stratton, and that's like, and that was with the OSAP program. So all the data they retrieved for that, there was a lot more stuff. But I do find it interesting. I think with the program, the Curse for Skinwalker Ranch, or whatever it's called in America, that kind of program, I think they're getting nods and winks for obviously people who used to work on the OSAP program, because like with the things they're looking at now, they're looking at internally in the Mesa, where there's something in there.
Yes,
there are anomalies in there and things like that. They found other anomalies. They know what they're looking for, and different signals they're getting. You know what I mean? When they're getting the one, well, that band running about the 1.6 gigahertz they keep getting, that's like a satellite communication signal. Aye, that you get military channels and other ones using that for one. It's running about that kind of range for talking to space to Earth, right? But the you won't get it sometimes what they get. So the difference between that is that does get used. But the interesting one that happens in Skinwalker Ranch is like the whole spectrum lifts at that. It's not just like you'll get on a spectrum analyzer, you'll get like certain points that pop up where this is. But the difference is what is it Eric Bard who works on it? Eric Bard.
Yeah.
The difference is what he said is when you the spectrum analyzer, if it's a normal kind of signal like that, you would see it kind of stationary. But the difference what you see is with there's a transit signal, it'll kind of jump about with the same kind of signal, or the full spectrum will lift at that kind of thing. So it'd be interesting. I'd be really interested to get a spectrum analyzer and do the same up at the Bathgate Hills and see what we can get, or some of these different locations.
Yeah.
Because I do look at these programs and kind of think to myself, right, they're probably using some of the kind of techniques that was maybe used in the ranch before, or they've probably found some new ones. Dr. Travis Taylor was on that as well. He worked for the UAP task force as well.
All right, to know that.
He worked for it as well. And he kept it secret until the last series there. He was kind of working for the UAP task force as well. But that was interesting because like Jay Stratton, he was the guy that set that up. So Grush, he probably worked under him or something at one point. So that was people try to discredit Grush who talked to all these 40 witnesses who were defence contractors or people in the military he knew and things like that. And they basically said they've worked on craft, they've seen biologics, have worked in like biological material or like bodies or whatever. They've seen a number of different craft. He said, I think something like 12 or 14 craft or something like that. That they've got. So all that's kind of in the mix of what's happening. But people are trying to discredit Grush. But at the same time, no taking into consideration, like some places that they know, no taking into consideration that he actually was an intelligence officer, worked for the geospatial unit, and he also was like working for the UAP task force, who was set up with like people like Jay Stratton and all that. So, I mean, I kind of see OSAP, and this maybe sound mad, you know what I mean? But I kind of see OSAP as a Trojan horse to it, the thing called what they call it is the program. The program is like basically the program what they're like dealing with UFOs and recover craft and all that kind of stuff for like back in the day, and that's what they call it, the program. I don't know. I might be totally wrong, but I kind of see OSAP as kind of like a Trojan horse to that because that was set up back in the day, like Harry Reid and things like that, the DIA, and that started. And ATIP came for that, and they were trying to get inside, and they were trying to get access to some other stuff as well, and then they've done a lot of their own stuff. You know what I mean? I don't know how far they might have got. Like they probably did get some knowledge of some programs and things like that, but I kind of look at it as maybe they were a wee bit on the outside of it. I might be totally wrong in that, but but that's when I listen to stuff and I read the books the day where you can kind of see that, and I kind of think maybe that's the Trojan horse to try and dig this out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The one thing I was really interested in is body language, and there's a YouTube channel called the Body Language, the Behavior Panel, and they're 4 world-class experts on body language, and from time to time they'll do things on UFOs, and they were looking at the body language of Grush, of also the presidents as well, and it was like with Grush, they were saying it's like he's holding something back, and
it probably is.
Yeah. I've got to admit personally, when the last time it was in July when him, Fravor, and Graves did their testimony to the Congress, I found Graves and Fravor more convincing. I felt, that's my personal views.
The thing about Grush is that people didn't understand as well. He's I don't know what it is, but he's somewhere on the spectrum as well. So he might, to some people, it might seem a bit awkward or a bit kind of off and whatever else, but it's like that's what has been kind of alluded to and things like that. I mean, but this guy's been in the mix of this stuff for kind of years, and he's a bright guy. You know what I mean? He's like a physicist as well. You know what I mean? And it's like it's interesting. I mean, so all that's going on, and I don't know how they're going to end up, because it looks like you've got certain people trying to push this out, although you might think like Leo Zondo and things like that. Some people think they're actually still working internally, but there's maybe trying to push it out, and then there's people trying to keep it in. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing about it all, which I've probably relayed before, is going back in the day before the videos of the Tic Tac came out and stuff like that. It probably was running a bit before that. It was before that. Tom DeLonge came out and he was talking to Joe Rogan about like To the Stars Academy and trying to get. He said he went to the story. He went to basically military insiders, whatever, and tried to basically say like, I can help you get this out, because people didn't trust the military and all that. I know he's going to get a story out and all that kind of stuff. So he got traction with it anyway, and he got invited to talk to a few people, and ended up in a skiff in Lockheed Martin, and talking about things as well, and how they're going to try and disclose this and all that. And he told Joe Rogan this story, and Joe Rogan just kind of thought he's absolute nuts, right? But then a year later, the Tic Tac videos come out, right? He's got To the Stars Academy. He's got Jim Simivan working for him, who was like quite high up in the CIA. Yeah. He's got Luis Elizondo working for him, who was head of ATIP. He's got Chris Mellon working for him, who was the Undersecretary for Defence for Intelligence. And he's also got Steve Justice working for him, who was like one of the project managers for Lockheed Martin. I mean, so he knows somebody, he knows somewhere, right? And then when the actual what do you call it happened? When they were running for when basically Hillary Clinton was running for president, and then all the kind of leaks came out about the Democratic emails and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He ended up losing the election. Maybe not just for that, but she lost the election and stuff. But in the emails, there was emails for Tom DeLonge, a guy called General McCaslin, who's supposed to be part of this program, or I think he's maybe retired now, whatever, right? Or he's probably a defence contractor now, whatever. But he was there was a General McCaslin, and there was people for Lockheed Martin and John Podesta, who was Hillary Clinton's right hand man, all talking about meeting and emails and blah blah blah, UEP stuff like that. In that tranche of emails, that was there. So what he said was, well, you don't know if the information he was told of some of these people was true or not. You know what I mean? But it was getting pushed out that way, and then it's a big kind of, it's a big lie if it is kind of that sense, and for what they're trying to do in a film, for to try and push us out. But I don't know what happened in regards to the Stars, because they went so far with it. They've done the documentaries with really, really good UFO documentaries about getting it pushed out, about the Tic Tac event and about other military insiders. And then it kind of died a death a wee bit, and then they all kind of split up, and then you've still got Leo Elizondo kind of pushing it out, trying to kind of do stuff. You still got Chris Mellon, and then and they still say, I mean, they talk about like when you had the hearings that came on recently with the two pilots, and you had David Grush. They said they kind of allude to there's more to come. There'll be more people there. You know what I mean? So the way kind of Leo Elizondo was, I can't remember where I read it, but he basically said this is just the start. And it was like there'll be more people to come on this. You know what I mean? If they get called up and stuff like that. And somebody asked James Licatzi, I think it was what's his name? Was it George Knapp, or no, it was Jeremy Corbell? I think I'd asked James Licatzi, who worked in the OSAT program, would you go in the stand? And he said no. You know what I mean? But because some of them still want to have, there's obviously a national security issue here as well, because if they think if any of this information goes to Congress, then it goes back to like China, or it goes back to Russia, or it goes back to whoever. So they didn't want the secrets going too far. But I mean, there's stuff happening, and all this stuff I've just spoke about, the mainstream people didn't know about it. I mean, it's totally nuts, because like I've mentioned this before, where you maybe talk to somebody about it, or try and just show a slight bit of interest to see where they are with it. And people are absolutely bloody oblivious to it. I mean, it's
it's crazy. Like, say for example, I take my dog around Dykeman Woods. So Dykeman Woods is one of the most famous, certainly in the UK, maybe Europe. I wouldn't go so far the world, but certainly one of the big ones. And I'll say Europe because I've even been on TV shows where they've been done from the Netherlands, and they've been
totally.
But when I go up there, maybe once every 2 or 3 days, and you get speaking to people, and there's even a signpost to say this is where the UFO happened. They've got like a little stand,
Yeah.
and people will go, oh, they'll know about it, and they'll go, oh, I knew Robert Taylor or something like that, but nobody's interested in it. I've spoken to two people, and I got speaking to one lady who said, yeah, her sister saw something in a place called Craig's Hill. Another guy who's quite interested in it, but it's just that there's hardly anybody really that interested, even though there's a big sign saying somebody got abducted here, and they'll just walk right past it and not care. The other one as well is that I always try to put feelers out when I'm at Ken Papel or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And next to Ken Papel, we're talking about
Quick,
standing.
UAP up there. Travis
Well,
Taylor accent. Travis
I
Taylor
actually,
accent.
I actually
UAP
have
right
done that.
there.
Yeah, I have seen UFOs in the past, and just before we came on, we are talking about screen memories, and I think there's a lot more to that. But I've actually said to somebody, "Do you not see that?" And they'll go, "Oh yeah," and it's like they'll forget about it, or it's not a big deal to them.
Mhm.
But yeah, going back to there's two stand. Oh, there's actually one sandstone now called the Clanking Stone, and there used to be two, and it's kind of like imagine Cairn Papel's a hill. At the kind of the bottom of this hill, there's this smaller standing stone. And I said, have you heard of anything unusual, or what have you heard? Do you know anything about that stone? I went, yeah, that's where the cows have a scratch. It's like that's the sort of level you get from most people, even though it's on the Guardian or on the BBC, as you're saying, it isn't out there. What my thoughts are is talking about what you're saying about spectrum analyzers. There's a type of technology come out called Internet of Things. It's been out here for a while, and you can actually take pretty much the entire electromagnetic spectrum, all the way from radio waves right the way through to ultraviolet light. And there's some sort of device, and they're designed to be cheap. Now, to set something up and have infrastructure is going to be quite expensive. Uh, but it is potential that if you had some of the projects are going about, like Project Namu or is it an Enigma project, I would love to see people, instead of looking just at cameras, actually trying to get out and trying to use IoT devices to capture data on places that are of high strangeness, like Cairn Papel or Bonnybridge or
Mm.
these places, and have not just one data point but multiple data points. And it's hard to if you're getting things like unusual infrared or unusual radio waves, it's a bit more convincing than just a camera being taken, and it could be like I get pictures of UFOs, and it's just a spot of light. There's
Yeah.
nothing much you can do with it.
Yeah. I know what you mean. And that's that you can date it. Most pictures are just like lights in the sky. I mean, and
Yeah,
the thing is, and that's what kind of annoys me. And I'm not saying I didn't get annoyed people sending pictures and that or anything like that. It's like I get annoyed with the whole kind of UAP task force and stuff like that. And like, it's a case of they're still analysing pictures. You know what I mean? We're so bloody past that. It's like unbelievable. I mean,
oh
it's
yeah,
like, I mean, like even we passed that with the Twining document, and they were talking about that. There's like basically this is like there's something there,
mm-hmm.
right? And I mean, when it's like they should be looking more at and they probably know this anyway, you know what I mean? But like with some of this thing, the program and that, but they should be looking more into actually like know a case of what they are, if they're there, it's like what they're doing. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? That's it. I mean, it's like, I mean, and I don't know if that's going to be the scary aspect to it or whatever, if what they're actually doing. Because they've been here for a bloody long time doing it, whatever they're doing.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
And
think yeah. I think if my views on this are we're not going to find out from the government, and they probably won't know themselves. Um, we're not going to find out from sightings either. We're not going. They're not. My talk, my research past year has been how do we use AI to determine to get an understanding on UFOs, and I've come to the conclusion we can't. It's just AI is based on data, and everybody will talk about fancy algorithms. The basic of it is data,
Mhm.
and when you look at like people, Malcolm Robertson and others will say 95% of sightings are incorrect. And even myself, who's seen these things, I do make mistakes. I've made all the mistakes that you can make, but I've definitely also seen UFOs. So how do you get the right data from the wrong data, from the right data from the wrong data, and make a proper AI model? It's very, very hard. But where I see we can do it is by using things like social media, for example, and trying to find out people who have determined, who have found, who are claimed to be abductions or experiencers, and trying to find trends and traits in them. Do they seem to be more spiritual, or do they seem to be suffering from anxiety? And that's definitely doable, because that's how that's why we're using AI nowadays. It's because we're trying to find trends and traits in people so that we can actually market it to people. So we have the data there to do it, but just not in a roundabout way. I think I know it's a bit silly, but
No, it's no.
yeah, OSAP we're trying to do it with the immune system. What we could do with a much bigger data source is actually find out people who have been experiencers, and then from there we can actually see what sort of trends are there. Like, say for example, if people start to be more spiritual or into Reiki or crystals and stuff like that, we can maybe get an assumption there's something sort of like spiritual nature to this. But if people seem to be anxiety or seem to be more scared of the dark or something like that, then we can maybe see there's maybe a more sinister aspect to it.
That's the thing. I mean, it's like what the whole kind of aspect that you've got. It's all love and light, or it's like something sinister, or it's like, I mean, it's like you've got that. It's all love and light, or you've got a camp where it's like something sinister. You've got another camp that just didn't actually get a hoot. You know what I mean? And but I mean, it's mad because you've got all that kind of going on, where like they're just it's just the now they're just playing a game with the whole kind of, at least they're actually kidding on, they're looking at like would you call it, the UEP task, like Arrow, you know what I mean? Their government, the news, just they're not even, I mean, they've done a report in 2000 or whatever it was, but they done actually the report they done is probably better than the report's been done with the UEP task force than that already. I mean, that was quite a lengthy report they done. I'm sure it's like 400 pages or something like that. And there was a lot in it, but it still came with the crunch where no defence significance and all that kind of stuff. That was then, though. That was then. And but the whole kind of thing, it's like, why they're here? I mean, that's it. So it's like the kind of conversation we had earlier on about there's different people have got different ideas of why they're here or why they're not here. I mean, nobody really knows.
Nobody knows.
I mean, it's all theories and conjecture and whatever. You know what I mean? And all we've got is basically the stories of experiencers. You know what I mean? And the story for experiences, don't get me wrong. Like I'm there to kind of believe experiences and things like that. But like some of the experiencer stories are either the experience it, there's a mixture with the experience it firsthand, or sometimes the experience it where it's almost like a kind of astral type thing. You know what I mean? As well. And I mean, and it's like then you get to the whole point where you look at like folk like John Keel, for example, and Jacques Vallée, you know what I mean? They end up coming to the conclusion that it's like it's all the same thing. I mean, there's like masks there. You know what I mean? It's like it's almost like letting you see what you think you're going to see and stuff like that. I mean, where back in years and years ago, where people seen like ships in the sky, actual like ships with like sails that would come down ropes and stuff like that. And then after that, they would also see, I know people have talked about this before, like they'd seen like some type of planes in the sky before planes were invented. It's almost like something kind of like edging us on. But it's a mad one. We all that. You know what I mean? What it is. You know what I mean? I kind of like subscribing to some of the ideas when I mentioned this before, but the Dolores Cannon stuff, where there's like multiple kind of things here, and they've all got different agendas, which you could easily kind of buy into. Some are for us, some aren't. Some are indifferent. Some are here to help us. Some are just watching. You know what I mean? Some have got their own agendas where they're probably doing stuff, and there is maybe nefarious bits there, and maybe there's good bits there, and there's maybe like a bit of a fight going on there, and using this as like some type of proxy war, as I heard somebody kind of mentioned that, which I kind of thought that kind of suited the bill quite well. But we didn't really know anything. I mean, and we can only chip away and try and find out more, but it's totally it's mind boggling. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the other thing as well that has been ignored with the UFO community and the paranormal community is uh, we've got people that are frightened or are being damaged by what they've seen. Now, I can tell firsthand that if you see something like a UFO, it changes your perspective uh, on life and the world. Even though you don't know what it is, it does open your mind up. But there's people that have had terrifying encounters and stuff like that. And unfortunately, I've never had anything like that. But I think now as well that we're experiencers, it must be hard for a lot of people who not only are struggling to come to terms with what has happened to them, but are being struggled to be believed as well.
Yeah.
So I think as well that not only do we have to take people for face value until we've found out that this, unless there's something that's come out that's maybe a bit dubious, but we're also going to have to talk about the human element about trying to be compassionate to these people and trying to understand and trying to help them because yeah we're way past way past time for not being something might be there. The one thing I wouldn't want to say that put me off the Arrow Congress hearing as well was Kirkpatrick was always saying we don't have any evidence of extraterrestrial,
Aye.
and I'm just thinking, well, that's actually making the parameters extremely narrow because it might not be extraterrestrial, and they could possibly say it could be like the something I don't subscribe to, but an extra dimensional hypothesis.
Aye, but these people just play with words. You know what I mean? So they don't lie and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So if he, but the thing is though, he could turn in and say, well, like the CR, like let's say for example, he's got a great picture of a UFO, a great video of UFO, or he sees a UFO, he still doesn't know that's extraterrestrial. So he could easily say, I've no evidence it being
Yeah.
extraterrestrial. You know what I mean? Because he's not got the craft and he's not looking at it. But it's interesting when you think, so let's say for example, something does happen through Congress, which I'm quite dubious it will actually happen, right? Because there's people fighting it, some people fighting against it in the Congress and the DoD, and then you've got everybody else in the wings, like the basically people who are into UFOs and into all this, you know what I mean, like ourselves. But you get like all that going on, and let's say for example, we do get somewhere over it, and it's like they do end up getting retrieve craft or whatever out of some of these defence contractors, or they find this, which was alluded to. There's actually a craft that big that it can't be moved, and they built a structure over the top of it. I mean, that was another one that's alluded to. Greer alluded to that, and what's his name? What's his name again? What's his name again? Australian guy.
Coulthard.
Aye, cool. So he basically alluded to the same as well. So there's a craft that big. This has been coming out with some of the military insiders and stuff like that. A craft that big that it can't be moved, and it's got a structure built at the top of it. There's no in the US. You know what I mean? People kind of thought it was somewhere else, like it was Korea or something like that. I was even thinking, I was actually thinking like the other day, there was like, what if it's somewhere like Antarctica or something like that? And they've just built a structure at the top of it or something like that because like there. But anyway, so you've got all this. So let's say, I think of this as well. So like, let's say something comes out where we have got these and we've retrieved this, right? But that leaves them with a hell of a lot of more questions to answer. I mean, so it's like, Kenny, what did you find? What body did you find? What are they doing? What do you know about them? How long you knew about them? You know what I mean? Have you colluded with them? You know what I mean? Because you can imagine, let's say, for example, a big craft like that crashing, that's just no carrying a couple of guys. What's that carrying? You know what I mean, you think if you've got a big craft that's landed and can't fly out anywhere or it's crashed or whatever, and then there's, let's say, for example, there's supposed to be hybridization programs and all that kind of stuff in that. What if there's something like that in that craft? You know what I mean? It's like if they've got a massive thing like that, it's supposed to be covered up or whatever. See, you think of these things when you get craft, it's crashed and stuff like that, or retrieved or whatever. They might only have a couple of occupants flying it. They might not have anybody or whatever else. But what if they've got? What if they're quite big? And what if they've got like these things that described? They've got instrumentation and tables, and they've got other things on them that would totally kind of freak you out. You know what I mean, in regards to things like hybridization things to make that. You know what I mean? Or, you know what I mean? So I kind of think of things like that.
What
But
I
it's,
wonder is about the crashes is we hear too many crashes now, and I think it was on Kurt Jumunkle's show. What was it? The Theory of Everything. I believe, if I'm right, Lou Alexandro says something like they've been interfering with our DNA for about 65,000 years. If that right?
it was 70 years or something. Aye, 70,000, 70
Yeah.
years, 70,000 years.
Now,
Aye, apparently.
you've got a species, and we go back, and then let's just look at Terry Lovelace, who said the beings that he had telepathic communication with clearly were far more intelligent. So if we've got a species that is much more intelligent than us and has at least a 70,000 year advantage, why have they not? Like, you just think maybe they maybe looked at the health and safety records and thought maybe we'll avoid that bit or that certain area. The technology, I would there must be an assumption to see why is there so many crashes. What it just
Well, I mean,
there's
the whole
yeah
kind of aspect on that was what's been kind of put out is, well, I don't know if it's true or not, what I mean, but the crashes were caused by certain types of radar that was developed, like kind of crappy radar you used to get in like the 50s and 60s
yeah
and things like that,
mhm,
right? So that was apparently, it basically affected their craft, apparently. And then there was also things where there was like supposed to be giftings of craft. And then there was supposed to be archaeological kind of craft found as well and stuff like that through time. So that was like some of the answers for that. You know what I mean, for some of the craft in regards to it. And then you don't know, for example, if that's maybe part of it, and then they try and bring them down. You know what I mean? They bring them down because at the end of the day, if there's companies, for example, like these defence contractors, and they bring these craft down or they retrieve these craft,
mhm,
it's that's like gets paid up. You know what I mean, it's like Casey, like that's like they're making money off that. I mean,
mhm.
they're into technology. It's not it's all about they're probably even getting no worried about the whole aspect of obviously they're worried about where they're fair, whatever else. But I mean, they're looking at an aspect where, well, we could develop this, we could do this, we could do that, and get a cutting edge, whatever. You know what I mean? It's all money now. You know what I mean? That's the kind of mad thing with it. I mean, but it's mad to see how it's all going to kind of turn out.
Yeah,
But I don't know the reason why it's all getting pushed out now. You know what I mean? That kind of is a bit of a funny one. You know what I mean? But it's but I think the only way I've said this plenty of times before. I think the only way to actually find out for yourself is probably something to be consciousness. You know,
yeah. Like you saw that OSAP actually had a department looking purely at consciousness. Uh, yeah, it's yeah, the consciousness bits.
but
It's the greatest mystery.
the remote viewing program never really that's probably no stopped. You know what I mean, there was things about Luis Elizondo, but you didn't know about the now to do with remote viewing.
Mhm.
But there's like that still kind of went on. That went on for years and years. I mean, decades. You know what I mean? What was the two programs of that called? Was it Grill Flame and the Stargate program or something like that? They did it.
I
And it was
can't
like
remember the names.
and that was done between numerous different nations. You know what I mean? You had Americans done it, the Russians did it, and I mean we probably did something to do it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? But there's that much, but it's just mad to think. I mean, I do think of that whole aspect of it, the question. That's the thing. If an end does come out, it's the questions after it. You know what I mean? It's like the whole kind of thing. Well, what's actually going on? And then you hear kind of mad stories, which we talked about earlier on about the Terry Lovelace thing, where it's like it seems when he was at the end of his kind of one of the visitations he had or whatever, he was in a craft, and they basically said that there was like some type of treaty made between military and some kind of nefarious type beings, and then they've like double crossed them or whatever else, or they were doing it in regards to the exchange technology for like some human, you know what I mean, some humans and cattle and stuff like that. I mean, that was added into his second book, as we talked about earlier on, and he never added it in his first book because they thought it was too out there, which might discredit the first book. But
The,
basically, he said that there was like beings on the moon, there was beings in the moon, and the ones in the moon were also on Earth as well, or parts of the Earth as well, and they were like the more kind of reptilian ones, or whatever. And I know it sounds absolutely freaking bonkers, this, you know what I mean? But that's what it relayed in the book, that these things had basically kind of swapped technology for people or whatever. You know what I mean? And that he was quite comfortable put it in his first book, but put it in his second book because they said he had to put it in. And that's why I asked him in the interview. I interviewed him. I said, "Do you think that they lie?" So I was kind of thinking, did they just lie to discredit you, or add maybe something in there to discredit you? Because if you tell the story, it just sounds that fantastical that it's just totally bonkers. And he said, I wouldn't like to think so because this being he had a connection with through most of his life. They said I wouldn't. I'd feel like hurt or if that was the case because he didn't think they would have done that. And he said it does sound outlandish and stuff like that, but I had to relate it because that's what I was told. But stories like that, but you hear stories like that, right? Which is his story. And Terry Lovelace quite seemed a total genuine guy, you know what I mean? To me anyway, I kind of thought he was. And he had a kind of few high positions in that, what he did, you know what I mean? And didn't relay any stories until he retired. But then you've got people like who came out before a lot of this stuff's even been out there, like John Lear, who got interviewed with George Knapp, and he talked about because he had a lot of military insiders he talked to because his dad invented like Learjet and all that kind of stuff, and he was a pilot and everything. He had a lot of connections, and he basically was talking about some of this stuff. Actually, some of the stuff he talks about now is like it's people are talking about it now coming out. You know what I mean? That was like in 87 or something, or 88 or whatever it was. And he was basically saying that it was a treaty made, and then but then there was the Great Deception. But I mean, I've never really heard what he alluded to what the Great Deception was. But I mean, probably something like that. You know what I mean? Or they're doing whatever, or doing more of what they shouldn't have been doing, or whatever, or doing more of what they agreed to do, or whatever.
There's also
If that's what you believe, you know what I mean. Obviously, I believe all this and I believe into everything, but it's food for thought when you've got multiple kind of sources kind of pushing this out for different kind of things. And
like if you look at though, like talking about the stuff, going back to images for a second, when the Nimitz situation happened with Tic Tac, they had like multiple radars, multiple infrared and visual contact. So you see why going back to images is a little bit like, oh come on, we've done that. But taking that back, let's look at some of the maneuvers that craft did. It went from like what was it, 80,000 feet. So that's 24,000 meters. So that's 24 kilometers or 15 miles. And that went from 50. So, say for example, I'm right, it's 15 miles. My math might be wrong.
it was basically space.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. So it was because that was like it was whatever it was the line of space because that's where that's where the radars kind of went to or whatever, and it dropped from space to like about a meter above the sea in a split second.
Yeah. Now, how does that's the bit that always I can't get my head around. Like, why would a species that are able to do a maneuver like that? So basically, if they want to abduct somebody, they just do something like that. They target a house and go right from zero to whatever in less than a second. Get there, pick it up, and then go right back before even the radar could detect them. But why? I don't know why would they want to have
Here's another one that I was thinking on the same kind of mind kind of thought. Right. Well, we'll put it that way. Like on that, there's different craft for different things, right? So that craft that day seemed to be doing something. It seemed to be doing something like to something that was under the water, and that's when they seen it, right? So they got a track and they went and seen this thing, and then it basically they were following them for. They said there was like loads of them. You know what I mean? Hundreds of them at one point or whatever. But they said there was loads of them, and they were following the carrier route for 2 weeks. And then when they went to see it, it was above the water, it was under the water, right? Well, no, the kind of story, but that seemed to be doing something, docking with something, doing something, or doing a job or whatever else. You could probably say that was maybe autonomous, unless it is maybe like a craft of yours of some sort. But I didn't think it was, right. So you've got that. So obviously there's different craft for different things, but then you get to the thing where you hear people talking about like the greys and all that kind of stuff and saying, right, are these things like AI or whatever,
Yeah.
right? Right. So stay with me here with this, right? So people are saying that. So let's say these things are worker bees or they're AI and that, right? If you and they didn't do much, they just basically, so why would you need to send these things into people's rooms, right? To beam them up into some type of ship when you could just probably do that anyway? Or does the technology they need to actually go down and grab the person and like and pull them through the wall or something like that? Because like it's like you've got things like that. I mean, like why could you know just have a fully and that's the thing as well. If there were worker bees and there were all that kind of stuff, you wouldn't need them to pilot anything. You could just have some type of drone that would just fly itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The
It wouldn't be things where a spindly that can't really lift anything,
Mhm.
right? They're in a craft. They're flying this craft. I mean, it's the now. You look at the thing with us now. I mean, if we're developing something like AI, you're not going to develop like an AI person to sit in sand and fly sand. You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
we've got like a limited career job and like quite spindly and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if I can agree with that idea that people are saying like the
Yeah.
AI maybe have like been bred for something, right? But at the same time, what did it actually do?
Yeah.
Because like why would you have, because that's the main kind of thing with abduction scenarios and things like that is you maybe have like three different types of three beings come into your room and then they'll kind of take you away and whatever else, good or bad, right? Good or bad abduction scenarios, you sometimes get that. You have like um three beings coming through the wall or appearing through the wall or appearing in the room and then taking you somewhere. Sometimes taking you physically, as in they feel their bodies going through the wall and all that kind of stuff. And then they'll be in a craft. Sometimes they'll take them almost like it's like an astral travel type thing.
Yeah. Uh,
So I mean, if these things are AI, why would you need them?
yeah.
You know
So
what I mean?
I study. I study AI, and I'm very interested in AI. And there, so let's look at like people like Terry Lovelace. And Terry Lovelace had when he was it was in the tent. He saw uh, the beings, and they were going around like it was in twos, wasn't it? So they were going around in twos, and he got the distinct impression these were like robotic.
Aye.
The one thing is that within AI, within robotics, it's actually still quite a underdeveloped field. And but what people who are saying, what a lot of roboticists are saying now is, you don't need to have a robot that looks like it's got like something from like Star Trek or like C-3PO, because the fact of the matter is that we can do these functions. What they want would to have a robot that does a specific type of function, look
Yeah.
nothing like us, and it would have a different types of senses. Like going back to IoT, it might be something that has looks at radar or something like that. So its configuration, its way of its physical design, software, how it works and how it interacts with us is going to be completely different. So why does their AI have a biological component to it, and why does it look so much like us? It's and you're absolutely right. Now, again, this is only I've never seen a grey, but I have spoken to people that have, and they've said that they're actually controllable. So I've heard of people just who have said they've seen them, and it's almost like you could almost communicate to them telepathically and get them to do something or to get them to relax. Now, again, this is only from what I've been told from other people. So I honestly don't know, but I do wonder if there's a consciousness aspect to it. I can I tell you a batshit theory I've got about the whole thing. I've been looking at the simulated universe recently, and one thing I wondered is what happens if it was an AI, a very intelligent AI, and to almost like have a paradox, it actually sends itself back in time and manipulates us to develop the technology to develop it,
Yeah.
almost like a silly theory, but
There's no, because I think of that as well, and I think to right. So let's say, for example, you were developing AI, right, and you were developing some type of robotic thing, right,
mm-hmm,
and you were making it more efficient and more efficient and more efficient and more efficient. You
mm-hmm.
would end up getting to us.
Yeah.
It's a
So that's
biological thing; it can reproduce.
yeah, that's what we're looking at just now. So when we look at like ChatGPT, we're um, within AI. there's now we've got what's called narrow AI. So narrow AI is like you'll have an AI model that can drive a car, but that same AI model, if you got it to make a cup of tea, would be absolutely useless. And now with like ChatGPT, what's happening now is actually there. ChatGPT is actually a bit of a misnomer. It's actually a bit of a. It's actually not one model, but it's actually about 8. And what they're doing is, what's the other place? Hugging Face, which is like around with aliens. They're making up models that can control different models. And what we're looking at is the onset of what's called artificial general intelligence, where we can have models that can do multiple different things. And they are actually starting to do to not only replicate what we can do, but in certain extent, in certain cases, actually exceed us. It's at the very very start of it, and people believe that AGI will come, but they believe that will be the point where we actually will have AI will be coming too close to us, or potentially it's actually expected to exceed us. And then when we add quantum computing into the mix, what a lot of scientists are talking about are things like the singularity effect, where we just simply don't know what will happen when you have like an ultra powerful quantum computer and have like a AI model on it. Like one part of the AI, one type of AI model that will actually work on a quantum computer is what's called a GAN, or was it generative adversarial neural network. And what that is a type of technology that uses deepfake. Now, if you can make a deepfake image and you've got a quantum computer, could you make a deepfake universe? Now, I know it's just silly. I don't have any scientific literature to back it up, but we're talking about things that are potentially even likely to happen within our lifetime, within the next 10 years or so. It's incredible.
On that note, with you saying that, right? So I've got some kind of thing to do with that as well. So like maybe like the simulation side of it, and maybe AI or so look at it this way, where, and I'm not going and fully into kind of AI or simulation, but if you think with the phenomena in general, right, the phenomena, or even things like the laws of attraction, right? Let's look at that. Like laws of attraction. So before we even go to that, we'll talk about it first. So laws of attraction. So if you want something, think about something like really enough, that will come to you, right? Like that's kind of like the basis here, right? Kind of crude basis here. The other kind of things is synchronicities. You think of something, you start seeing things today where mere things come to you, you know what I mean, and all that kind of stuff. If you're kind of thinking about it enough, you look at the phenomena, it looks back at you. You get things that happen and all that kind of stuff. Start thinking. So there's all that kind of stuff goes on, right? When you look at for example, the now where we all know our phones listen to us and stuff like that, right? So you've got like different apps that you probably have clicked yes to, and then they read the small print, and then your phone's listening to you and all that kind of stuff. So before you know it, you've told the wife that you maybe thinking about in a kitchen, and you're getting kitchen adverts and that fired up, or your internet on your phone and all that kind of stuff. Or I mean, that happens. That does happen. You know what I mean? That's like gen up happens to me and my wife all the time, where things we'll talk in the house, and before you know it, you've no mentioned to anybody else, and you start getting adverts for it and stuff like that. I mean, that happens like all day long. But what about when and that's just a program, you know what I mean? That's just it's just analysing whatever and then putting the data in there, then obviously firing your stuff back, you know what I mean? It's not maybe not an AI program, it's just a program, you know what I mean? It's doing that, right? And then you look further down for that. So there's other things we were talking about as well, with me and my wife, and my wife's doing all this kind of stuff, you know what I mean? But talking about stuff where you start getting stuff fed to you that you're no thinking about. Well, in fact, that you've no talked outwardly about or typed anything. So the last one I talked about, where you might have no typed on the internet, you might have no typed on your phone, but you just talked about it. Your phone listens to it, sends you some shit on it, right? And that happens all day long. But what about what happens when you didn't type it, you didn't talk about it, you think about it, and then you start seeing it? Because that happens as well. That's happened to me numerous times. It's happened to my wife numerous times. It's probably happened to a lot of my listeners out there as well, and maybe yourself. But you actually think about something without even down the road, we actually looking at it. It's probably easily the fact that it's looked at a number of things that you look at or you're into whatever else, and it can plot down the line of what you maybe want next, right? It might be something simple as that, and then
Yeah.
suddenly you're like, I was thinking about that, but how the hell's it showing me that now? When I've even talked about it or typed it in. So think about that down the line, what that would look like. You know what I mean? In some type of simulation, or maybe not even simulation, just some type of like thing like this where the phenomena is that advanced, like that, where you think of something and it comes to you. You're looking at something, it comes to you, generate something, it's happening. You know what I mean? So there's all that kind of aspect that I was kind of
Yeah.
thinking about as well, which is absolutely fucking bonkers. But
The the first part about things about explainable would probably be what I was saying about before about the AI and trying to find traits in people. And what they'll do is there'll be AI that will determine different traits in people, and then from there they'll be able to explain. They'll probably find, well, two people 40s live here, etc., etc. There's more of a tendency for them to like this sort of thing, and they'll just be sending you adverts, and there'll be ones that you haven't even thought about, but or you have thought about, but you haven't typed into a phone. There is actually an explainable aspect to it, but there's also, yeah, I see where you're coming from as well. But there's, when it comes to synchronicities, I'm going to go off topic a bit, but I'll tell you one of the biggest synchronicities that's ever happened to me. And as I always say, I'm well aware that we always look at the synchronicity that are valuable to us, but we probably missed a trillion others that throughout the day. But we talked earlier about A70 incident, and that's set in West Lothian. It's actually a really interesting place. It's called Harper Rig. There's an old abandoned castle. There's a website that's saying that castle is actually the reason why Cairns Australia's got its name. And there was a Skywatch with SPI there, and Alison Dunlop, who's been in the show, was there. And both of us were there. Alison's got a book coming out, and she actually mentions this experience. And both of us had this sense of something black. I can't remember. Did she actually say on the show about us seeing this? I can't remember, but there was like a black pulsating energy. And I was like, oh, that's odd. And Alison noticed it as well. And I went back to living in Markinch at the time, and we were looking at a new house because we were expecting our son to come. And the next minute, a few days later, I had these really weird dreams, and I call them UFO dreams because they're not normal dreams. They're quite disconcerting. I just almost like saying, "We're kind of broken the connection with you, but you want to come back to it. You're interested in this. We're coming back." And then a few days later, this massive golden orb appeared right in front of me, and there's been synchronicities that have happened since then. Now, again, I'm very well aware that I'm probably being a bit silly, but we were not looking to move to Livingston. We're looking to Dundee, Fife area.
mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, these hills that we saw that night, I can see them every night from my bedroom, every night.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I go to the place, there's something happens, something just weird happens. Like, I'll give you an example. I took my pal there, and that night I was watching Howard Hughes' TV program, and Malcolm Robertson was on talking about the exact same area I'd just been to about 3 hours before.
Aye.
And even other things like my dog's a pedigree, and his lineage has actually got Harper Rig. Now, why is a dog? Why is this dog's grandfather called Harper Rig? Now, and
Aye.
it's just silly little things like
Yeah,
that.
totally. That's it. Some people
Yeah,
miss them. I mean, that's the thing. It's like you need to be aware of them to get them.
yeah,
I mean, there's loads there. Some people kind of totally miss them, and that's it. You know what I mean? Nods and winks. You know what I mean? They're there.
100%.
Definitely are.
Yeah,
Well, it's been a good kind of interesting chat. I mean, we've kind of been on the go for the last. I mean, the listeners probably didn't miss the first part of the chat, so we've been on the go for like the last kind of good couple of hours, 2.5
yeah,
hours. So, listen, Matt, thanks very much for your time tonight, and good, interesting chat. We'll definitely do it again. I've got Ron Moorhouse coming on Monday if you're interested.
yeah.
Legend in the Bigfoot field. So that's on the 6th, and it'll be going out shortly after. You know what I mean? So that'll be quite interesting. Look at that. But and then after that, we're going to do a wee bit in Ben McDo as well. Talk about bit of book reviewing that on another night, and then we'll hopefully at some point get back up there and get a visit.
Yeah,
That as well.
Bermude's it's a beautiful place in the world. It really is.
Yeah, totally is, mate. Totally is. Right, well, so thanks very much, buddy. And listen, we'll catch up with you soon. All right.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for having me on.
That was good.